for a World exclusive from Amman, the capital. Queen Rania, welcome to our program.
So she's
Thank you,
she's
Christian.
Palestinian.
Can I ask you first, as an Arab, as a Palestinian, as a human being, a mother, how you're feeling ever since October 7th?
איך היא
Well, look,
מרגישה?
Christian, I cannot begin to describe to you the depth of the grief, the pain, and the shock that we are feeling here in Jordan. All of us are united in this grief, regardless of our origin. We are just can't believe the images that we're seeing every single day coming out of Gaza. We're going to bed seeing those images and waking up to them. You know, I don't know how to, you know, as a mom, we've
So she goes to bed and wakes up with the images from Gaza. So everything started in Gaza according to her narrative. But as we know, I mean, you can't hide it. October 7th started for us Israelis. I woke up at October 7th with a siren and a boom and a rocket landing nearby. So that's interesting. And then we woke up to the news, the horrific news, that terrorists from Hamas, Palestinian terrorists from Hamas, invaded our country and massacred, raped, and beheaded our babies. And if you're a mom, you must have had babies. How would you feel if they were beheaded?
seen Palestinian mothers who've had to write the names of their children on their hands because the chances of them being shelled to death, of their bodies turning into corpses, are so high. I just want to remind the world that Palestinian mothers love their children just as much as any other mother in the world.
So if you love your child, do you send them to school to learn how to kill Jews? Because that's what they do in Gaza. They teach the kids to kill. There was one terrorist and he called his mom and said, I just killed 10 Jews. Yeah. This is the kind of education system you have as a mom. Do you want your child to grow up to be a murderer? Because basically that's the education. I'm a teacher. This is what you're teaching them. Kill the Jews. So what do you expect if you teach somebody to kill? That, you know, the other side fights back. We don't want to be martyrs. We're not shaheeds. We don't like to die. So when your Palestinian, not militants, let's call them by their names, terrorists, invade and murder babies and children, then we have to stop the killing machine. But Hamas hides behind children. We just had a rocket launcher in a mosque, in a kindergarten. So you love your children so much, then why do you allow Hamas to use your children like that?
And for them to have to go through this is just unbelievable.
It is
And
unbelievable.
equally, I think the people all around
Who
the
chose
Middle
it?
East, including
They're the victims. Who chose this war? Who started? Who started every freaking war? It's you guys. You started. Hamas started. So stop bullshitting on CNN.
Jordan. We are just shocked and disappointed by the world's reaction.
Oh, yeah.
to this catastrophe.
They should celebrate the murder and massacre
In the
of
last
Jews.
couple of weeks, we have seen, a glaring double standard in the world.
So what she's doing is actually telling us what they're doing to us. The double standard is on the other side, sweetheart, not on our side.
When October 7th happened, the world immediately and unequivocally stood by Israel and its right to defend itself and condemned the attacks that happened.
How horrible of the world to defend babies that are beheaded, women who are raped and laughed at and mocked at and displayed in the streets of Gaza. How horrific of the world to condemn rape and murder and beheading of babies.
But what we're seeing the last couple of weeks, we're seeing silence in the world.
Really?
Countries have stopped at just expressing concern or acknowledging the
Oh,
casualties.
they don't have concern
But
for
always
terrorists.
with a preface
How horrible that the world doesn't express concern for terrorists.
of declaration of support for Israel. And, are we being told that it is wrong to kill a family, an entire family at gunpoint, but it's okay to shell them to death?
Well, we're not targeting civilians, are we? It's your Hamas coward terrorists who are placing their bases where children are, and they don't allow them to be evacuated to the other part of Gaza, which is safe. They prevent civilians from fleeing to safer areas.
I mean, there is a glaring double standard here.
Definitely.
And, it is just shocking
I agree.
to the Arab world. This is the first time in modern history.
The double
that
standard
there
is yours.
Human suffering, and the world is not even calling for a ceasefire. So the silence.
Well, a ceasefire so you can continue to invade our homes. We had everyday attempts to invade our land by terrorists that were armed and willing to murder children and families. Yes, but you don't condemn that. You are a mother and you don't condemn beheading of babies. What kind of a human being are you? You're supposed to be a queen. By the way, who made you a queen? England made you a queen. You had nothing. They created a state called Jordan. There was nothing there. You were a couple of wandering Arabs, and all of a sudden you're a queen. God help you. I'm a queen too. Everybody's a queen. Everybody can be a queen. Britain created Jordan. They created Jordan in 1948. They created this fantasy state, which should have been Palestine, and it's 40% Palestinians. Why don't you take... Jordan refuses to take refugees. Why do you refuse to take them? Because you don't want terrorists. Why did you massacre Palestinians, your country? They massacred your people. Why? Why did they massacre them? They don't want terrorists. That's the answer. You ask yourself.
Is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit, you know, through their support.
You have very good
through the
English.
covenant
That's
they
I'll
Israel,
give you.
that it is just, it's
You lie
fragile
well in
itself.
English.
Many in the Arab world are looking at the Western world as not just tolerating this, but as aiding and abetting it.
Yes, the Western world allows all these ridiculous pro-Hamas demonstrations in places like Berkeley, California. This is what's astonishing, that they're allowing terrorists after 9/11.
And this is just horrendous. And,
It is.
and
I agree.
Deeply, deeply disappointing to all of us.
It is disappointing to me
I'm going to ask you
too.
more about this and go deeper into this, into your feelings about this. But first, I want to ask you. You know, the Israelis are shocked to their core. The grief, what happened to them has never happened in that way since the Holocaust, and they are shaken to their core, as I said, and the grief. I just want to get from you what you felt on October 7th.
Well, let's.
Well, of course, I was shocked, and you know, Jordan has made his position very clear. We condemn the killing of any civilian, whether Palestinian or Israeli. That is Jordan's ethical and moral position.
Yes.
And it's also the position of Islam. Islam condemns the killing of civilians. As my husband mentioned recently, the Pact of Omar, which was issued on the gates of Jerusalem 15 centuries ago, that's 1,000 years before the Geneva Conventions, orders Muslims not to kill a woman, child, or elderly person, and not to destroy a tree or hurt a priest. And so this is what we believe are the rules of engagement at time of war. But they need to apply to everybody. So yes, there was the shock and there is the condemnation. But why isn't there equal condemnation to what is happening now?
Well, I didn't hear you condemn, honey. I didn't hear one word of condemnation.
I just want to emphasize that what happened on October, this conflict did not begin on October 7th, although it has been being portrayed as that. You know, most networks are covering the story under the title of Israel at War. But for many Palestinians on the other side of the separation wall, on the other side of the barbed wire, war has never left. This is a 75-year-old story, a story of overwhelming death and displacement to the Palestinian people.
Because your country, Jordan, should have been Palestine. Your made-up country, where you are a queen of made-up country, should have been Palestine, but the British created Jordan. And as for living behind barbed wires, they went to work. Where are the leaders of the Palestinians? Why did the leaders of Hamas live in Qatar? Why don't they live in Gaza? Because they don't want to face the consequences of the actions of which they order people to do. They tell people to go and kill Jews and then don't even live in Gaza, so they don't suffer the consequences. The other point being is they go to work in Israel. Israel provided electricity, water, work. There was a high-tech company that gave them work, and they murdered your terrorists murdered the daughter of the man who built a high-tech company that provided work for Palestinians?
It is a story of an occupation under an apartheid regime.
Apartheid? Apartheid? We have 25% Arabs in Israel. How many Jews do you have in Gaza? Zero, except the 215 you kidnapped. So don't talk to me about apartheid, darling. There's 0 Jews living in Jordan, 0 Jews living in Egypt and in Iraq. Why? Why is that? Because you're so tolerant? The apartheid states are the Muslim states that don't have any Jews or any Christians.
Occupies land, that demolishes
Hamas?
houses, confiscates land, military incursions, night raids. You know,
Night raids on terrorists that invade our country and do terror acts on our civilians and kill and kill again and again. That's why they're invasions.
context of a nuclear-armed regional superpower that occupies, oppresses, and commits daily documented crimes against Palestinians is missing from the narrative.
Queen Rania?
You know, for too long, Palestinians
The IDF doesn't target civilians. It looks for terrorists. And you know it, and we know it, but you lie. You lie. Look how she closes her eyes. She doesn't want to look at the camera. You are such a good liar.
live.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to ask you a specific question because you're using a lot of words which clearly many in your, in the Arab world have used, words like apartheid and the rest. But you know that you are going to come under a lot of criticism.
There were at least 90 Muslim Arabs killed by Hamas. Do you know that the first woman they killed was a Bedouin woman? A Bedouin Muslim woman was the first one. They killed Bedouin children with rockets. What the hell are you talking about? Apartheid and crimes. What about your crimes against Muslims and Jews and Christians and Buddhists? Because the Thai people they murdered. Why did they kill over 30 Thai citizens? What was their crime against humanity? So let's stop the BS.
From Israel and its supporters. And I'm wondering whether you're coming out to speak.
But let me just emphasize that apartheid is a designation that was given not by Arabs, but by Israeli and international human rights organizations.
Because there's some screwed up Israeli and human rights activists. So please bar their narrative. They don't know the history of their own people either.
You wrote in an Instagram story just in the last week, it isn't self-defense if you're an occupying force, and you show the destruction of Gaza. And you have posted a video of yourself from a presser in 2009 during that war, saying it is heartbreaking to see how little has changed. The world cannot remain silent. This has to stop.
Well, why don't you care about Arabs that live in Israel? Talking about apartheid. What's the difference between somebody living in Gaza and somebody living in Israel? Why is their blood cheaper? Why is the Muslim woman who's shot to death by Hamas terrorists, why is her blood less important than a Palestinian living in Gaza? Why do you make a difference between blood and blood? A dead person is a dead person is a dead person. Why do you differentiate? You're the apartheid person. You're the one not taking refugees. You're the one who don't allow Palestinians to live there because you want the conflict to continue, because you don't want them in your country, even though you're Palestinian.
Do you feel that you have a particular voice, as Queen of Jordan, in a country that has a peace treaty with Israel?
Exactly.
Speak up?
It's not about me, it's about speaking up for humanity. This is not about...
So I'm not human, right? I'm not human. Jews aren't humans. Only Arabs from Jordan or Gaza are humans. Arabs who live in Israel are not human. Everybody that lives in Israel is not human, but you are human.
Pro-Palestinian. This is about choosing the people, the everyday people on both sides. And,
thank you for saying that. It took 7 minutes for you to say both sides.
Under oppression and the dehumanization
of Hamas, sweetheart.
Daily indignities and human rights violations. Whether
of Hamas.
Jailed or humiliated
of Hamas.
Or harassed.
Of Hamas.
They do not have freedom of movement. There are over 500 checkpoints scattered all over the West Bank.
Because if we don't have them, they kill us.
Illegal by the International Court of
It's also illegal to be terrorists. Why do we have the checkpoints? Because we're mean, cruel people? No, it's because the terrorists come from Gaza and attempt to murder us constantly. And look what happened on October 7th. They finally managed to do what they planned and declared to do. Why did they declare that they want to wipe out every Jew in the world? Why did they declare that? People who live in Gaza. It's not a great liberal society, is it?
Of justice that has separated the
Justice.
territories into 200 disconnected enclaves. And you've seen the aggressive expansion of settlements on Palestinian land.
And you are one big settlement. Your country was invented in 1948 by the British. So tell me about settlements. This is an ancient historical homeland of the Jews. Your country has been invented.
And those have interrupted the territorial contiguity of the territories and has deemed an autonomous, independent Palestinian state not viable. So you are seeing all these, this is the back.
Because you guys rejected time and time again. How many times did the Palestinians reject? Today is the anniversary of the death of Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin. He signed with Yasser Arafat a deal. What did Yasser Arafat do? Continued to murder people by bombing buses. Yes, I was there when there were heads rolling because of Yasser Arafat. He signed a peace treaty with Israel, and he didn't implement it. So when you point to Israel, fingers are pointing at you. You don't take responsibility or accountability for your refusal to accept the peace deal you are signed on.
Background of this conflict. There's a hyperfixation on Hamas now because of what happened the last couple of weeks. But this is a problem that far precedes
Yasser
Hamas.
Arafat is also a problem.
This is a fight for freedom and for
What freedom? You were giving the opportunity to, look how she closes her eyes again. You were giving the opportunity to have a Palestinian state since 1948 when the UN declared two states. You rejected it time and time again and chose violence because you don't want a two-state solution. You want a one state, another Muslim state, even though you have, I don't know how many, 20, 21, 22, I don't know even how many failed Muslim states where there's no human rights.
justice. And that is what needs to be heard.
Can I ask you this question then? Because, quite a brave, I think she's Saudi anyway, a journalist on the Saudi television network Al Arabiya, took this and hammered Khalid Mashal, the former head of Hamas, and said to him, the butchery, well, that's my word, but she said, what everybody's seen on their screens has turned the world away from the Palestinian cause. And just to expand, people are saying Hamas and what it did has brought this down on these poor people of Gaza.
They're not poor people. They celebrated and cheered 9/11, October 7th.
I do not believe in, as I said, in the killing of civilians. But this is a story of violence that has been going on now for so long.
By you, by Palestinians.
But at the end of the day, what we're seeing today and what people need to understand is that, yes, under the guise of the right to defend itself, we are witnessing atrocities. Every country has a right to defend itself, but not through any means, not through war crimes, not through collective punishment.
War crimes were committed in Israel, sweetheart.
6,000 people, civilians killed so far.
Terrorists,
6,400 children.
thousands and thousands of Palestinian terrorists hiding behind children.
Self-defense. We are seeing butchery at a mass scale using...
Because you use children as human shields. That's why. Because no sane, civilized person hides behind a child.
Precision weapons, So for the past 2 weeks, we have seen the indiscriminate bombardment of Gaza. Entire families wiped out. Residential neighborhoods flattened to the ground. The targeting of hospitals and schools. And
the targeting of hospitals. There was a rocket by Hamas. It was proven. The EU, everyone knows that it was Hamas who sent the rocket that targeted the hospital where there were 500 killed. So first look at your own.
Churches
This is too much.
And mosques and medical workers, journalists.
Because you placed rocket launchers in hospitals and mosques. And we cannot have a rain of rockets. I live under constant rocket attacks, sirens. We have constant sirens. Different areas in Israel have more than others. And we have now from the north the Hezbollah. What the hell are you talking about? Targeting mosques. This is such a lie. This is a blood libel. This is what it is.
UN aid workers. How is that self-defense? You know, why is
Well, when you throw rockets from a heavily populated region and you place the rocket launchers where schools are and mosques, what do you expect us? How do you expect us to destroy the rocket launchers? And they've been warned. October 7th, the Israeli civilians didn't get any warning. Israel doesn't target civilians; it targets rocket launchers.
Why is it that whenever Israel commits these atrocities, it comes under the banner of self-defense, but when there's a
Because we don't start the war, we don't aim at civilians. That's why.
violence by Palestinians, it is immediately called terrorism?
Because it is terrorism to behead babies, you idiots.
Is the word terrorist just reserved exclusively for Muslims? And
No, those Muslims also killed Muslims. Terrorists are people that target civilians and chop their heads off and burn them alive and rape women. These are terrorists. They just are there to terrorize and to cause destruction. And this is what they say they do, and this is what they do.
Arabs?
Well, let me ask you then.
There's a
because
real double standard here.
Yes, your double standard.
There's a whole symmetry that we see.
Well, let me ask you this. Your
She has amazing makeup, and look, she's like a gorgeous lady, but she is so corrupt because I'm sure she knows that what she's saying is complete BS.
husband, King
There's a
Abdullah,
false symmetry because these are not two equal people in the conflict, you know.
Yeah, Iran supplied them with the best rockets and weapons and trained them. So it's not equal at all.
One is an occupier and one is the occupied.
You're the one who occupies, sweetheart. You're occupying the whole area of Jordan is one big occupation. This should have been Palestine. Why didn't you let your Palestinian friends there? How come Jordan refuses to take in Palestinian refugees? You answer that.
One has a
How come Palestinian refugees are all over the U.S., Canada, Europe, but not in Jordan? In Jordan, there are 4% Palestinians. How come you don't let them in? You have a large area there in the desert. You could start a whole colony. No, you want to perpetuate the refugee situations. You don't want them to be settled anywhere so they can fight Israel and you can take over Israel and make our country part of a large Arabian empire.
military, one of the mightiest in the world, and the other doesn't have a military at all. So there is a false symmetry here that is being
Yeah, they have well-trained terrorists that were trained in Iran. I wouldn't say they don't have a military.
drawn. And there's also, you know, when you say the right to
So you don't have a military and there's no address in the UN, so there's nobody to blame when they chop babies' heads off and when they murder and rape.
defend itself, that does not say the entire story. It doesn't say the story of the violation of international law, international humanitarian law. It doesn't tell you the suffering and the story of an occupation. You know,
You're not occupied. Hamas is ruling there, so you can say it a million times, occupation, occupation, occupation. Hamas is ruling there.
Israel is in violation of no less than 30 UN security resolutions.
Because the UN always targets Israel, doesn't target Iran. Not one declaration against Iran or Russia. Why is that? Don't they have, you think Putin bombing Ukraine doesn't deserve a human rights violation? Do you think Iran beheading women and murdering them just because they don't have a hijab? If you were in Iran, you would be beheaded now for not hiding your hair. What the hell are you talking about? Just because the UN doesn't declare you as human rights violation doesn't mean there aren't human rights violations.
That require it and it alone to act to withdraw from territories occupied in 1967, to stop the second.
Jordan occupied Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. Jordan occupied so many areas of Israel. And then the Palestinians didn't want a state. From 48 to 67, Jordan occupied East Jerusalem. Jordan occupied Gaza. Jordan occupied West Bank, and yet they didn't ask for a Palestinian state. There weren't a people under Jordanian occupation. All of a sudden there are people as soon as Israel comes in. 1967 was a war Israel didn't ask for. We didn't ask for, but you occupied East Jerusalem.
Settlements, the separation wall, the human rights violations. This is at the crux of this issue. It is not this hyperfixation on.
So you ask us to just give up our land where you live in your little in your palace, your huge in your huge country, and you refuse your brothers, the Palestinians, entrance to your country. I can't take more of this. Sorry, I've had it. I feel like barfing. What do you say, Shmuel? Just let it go.